Well, welcome back to Two Pastors and a Mic. My name is Shannick.
And I'm Corey.
And we're so thankful for you wherever you're listening from. We appreciate you joining us. We have a lot to celebrate. Of course, we just came out of Christmas, so we hope you had an amazing time with your family celebrating Christmas. But also, I want to take just a little bit of time to be grateful for you, our listeners.
Yeah.
Each and every single week, we ask you to reach out, to leave a review, to also share this podcast. And you've been doing that just word of mouth. You've been texting your friends the podcast episodes, and we've just honestly have had quite a bit of success this past year. And we're just so thankful that you continue to join us on this journey of just life and figuring things out, and we love it. Matter of fact, you got some numbers for me. The podcast success, check this out. In 2021, is this when we started the podcast, correct? For the year, we had 9,006 total downloads. 2022, we had 16,628 downloads. So not quite double, but a big jump. We averaged nearly 1,400 downloads a month last year. This year, 2023, we have over 25,000 downloads, and we're averaging over 2,000 downloads per month. And so we did eclipse the 50,000 downloads this year, and you're going to hear us today talk a lot of just not only statistics, but things that have happened in our life over the past year, because this is the last podcast of 2023. And as the title suggests, we want you to join us as we look back and just enjoy the journey that was this past year, and to see, to see what God did in and through our lives, in and through this podcast. And we just want to offer this because we think it's important to also remind you to celebrate, to look back. We want you to be people that remember what has happened in your life over the past year, to think about some things that sometimes get overlooked, but maybe this year you'll take some time to really think about, maybe even write down or share some things that you consider maybe wins, and maybe even talk about some losses and how you can learn from them and grow from them. And this is what we want for you as we talk about our wins this year.
Yeah, Julie and I started doing this in 2019, where we spent about 30 minutes at the end of every year talking about things that we accomplished, things we celebrated, wins. And I think it's a really good habit. In fact, when this episode releases and you see the posts on social media, we're going to talk through our personal wins. We're going to talk through our favorite podcast episodes, favorite sermon series at Hill City, and just some things that we've been wrestling or struggling with. And we would love for you to post your comments below when the posts come out. We'd love to hear your wins. We'd love to hear what podcast episode was your favorite, sermon series was your favorite if you're a part of our church journey, and some things that if you're comfortable with sharing publicly is what you're struggling with or wrestling with, or maybe just direct message us, and we'd love to join you in faith, either prayer for you or just celebrating with you or encouraging you, however that seems fit.
And so this episode, we don't have necessarily a question of the week. The whole podcast is just answering several questions, and we're going to get things started with Corey. As you look back over 2023, what do you consider some of the biggest wins for you?
Yeah, seriously. One at the top of the list is my book, releasing a devotional. Now, one of my goals for 2023 was to release either several short ebooks or a devotional. It turned out to be a devotional, sold several hundred copies, which was crazy. Thank you for purchasing that. If you haven't, go get it. I've heard so many great things because it is a 21-day Devo. And so it released November 1st. I'm just now starting to hear from people that they concluded it and loved it, and we're so grateful for it. So yeah, if you haven't gotten that, you should do that. Also, I was asked, probably one of my personal favorites is I was asked to write the intro of a book with several authors I look up to personally. It's called Free to Give. You can get it. It's around generosity and not a tithe, which might be shocking for several of you, but it was so fun to be asked to do that. That was a huge major win. Got to go to Europe for the second time, and looking forward to in 2024 going back for a third time with you this time around. I started my doctorate, which by this time next year we'll be celebrating that you call me doctor.
No. You make that joke every time you bring up your doctorate. I'm going to have you not talk about your doctorate.
I'm going to be one of those guys
every single week.
Will be weirded out if you call me doctor. I don't really care about
Maybe I'll do that in
but
return once you get it and make it super weird for you.
Yeah. I celebrated 11 years at Hill City Church, which in the church world, that statistic is crazy because longevity at a single church is not the norm. And so I'm just super grateful. Actually, we were talking off the mic this past this morning when we were recording this, 2023 was probably my favorite year being a part of Hill City Church as a whole. A lot of it has to do with a lot of these wins and things
Yeah.
that we celebrated. But this was my first full year fully transitioned away from student ministry. Now, I know I transitioned in 2022, but this was the first full one as the teaching pastor and as a counselor and trying to figure out my schedule. I loved it, overseeing Harrison over the student ministries. Personally, we bought our second rental house, which has gone viral on several posts because
yes,
if
please share this.
If you're part of any fishing groups on social media, this house was going viral because someone must have drove by my house and saw it and took a picture of it. The front porch is a pontoon boat. Like they cemented
a literal pontoon boat.
They cemented a pontoon boat and attached that as the front porch. So yeah, that was awesome. So that's pretty awesome. I know I've been in the rental business now for almost 2 years, and it is definitely not, what do they call it? It is not quick
glamorous,
money.
sexy.
No, it is not.
It's not passive income.
It's not passive income.
It is a lot of work.
All my money is tied up in equity, which is great.
Yeah.
But it is not what I thought it was going to be with having this money just flowing through, because we've had to put so much money back into both houses. It's been a learning year for us in the rental business, but I look forward to in 10 years when it might become passive income. TLP as a staff, I guess we're calling it ZLD now. Big shout out to what my doctorate course is, which if you're listening to this and you're local to Louisville, you can sign up for my ZLD class, which is going to be my doctorate class. We're doing it Tuesday nights starting in February. So message me if you're interested in that. And this will tie back to one of the things I'm struggling with at the end of the episode, which we'll talk about, but just a huge praise with Zion's situation and health over the last 2 years. That's been the biggest struggle, and he is in weekly. He goes to PT and OT, so he's in occupational therapy and physical therapy every single week. He does both of those. And we had was supposed to be a neurological scan on his brain because he had a pre-birth diagnosis where he was given a 50% chance to survive, and he's passed all those things. Well, when we went to the neurological scan, the two neurologists, I guess, I spent 30 minutes with him, and they decided not to go ahead and do a MRI for him because he had developed so well. They didn't want him to be exposed to all of what is exposing to a 1-year-old during an MRI. So we're just super grateful that he has progressed so well. It was a slow time, but over the last 2 months, he's been progressing so well. And so that's just been a huge relief. It's one of the hardest things is when your kids are going through health stuff. So those are major wins for me.
Those are some major wins, and
a lot.
I know there's been years that we've talked, and sometimes you had a tough time coming up with 1 or 2, and that was like 8,
something like
significant
that. Huge ones.
Wins for the year. And so I guess if I'm going to now answer that same question, for me, really, I don't have 8. I probably could think a little bit longer, but I have 1, and it's one major one. And last year, around this time, I was thinking about New Year's resolutions, what I want for the coming year for 2023. And one of the things was, now that I had elevated you to teaching pastor, I was trying to figure out my role and things that I could be involved in our community. And so I just began to pray for vision, for direction. Started off the month of January like, okay, I got to get some type of mentor that needs to help him with vision, to get direction and all this. And really, when it came down to it, there was a lot of different voices speaking into my life and bringing encouragement. So I necessarily didn't need a mentor. And then in February, I just came to this realization, and I've told this story before, but about the housing and how nonprofits can also get in front of investors and start investing in these properties and fixing them up, not to make a profit, but to offer something that our community needs, which is affordable housing. So then I began to dream about this re-initiative program, is what I called it, like the power of restoring homes, redeeming stories, and rethinking how we do church. And it just took off. And once I got all of the structure down, I got the investments down, I got the approval from the board to just run with this. We quickly found a house. And then within 4 months now, as I'm saying this and releasing this podcast, The house is finished. Matter of fact,
She
I
moves in today.
believe the day that this podcast is released, she is moving in.
The 27th.
Yeah, today,
right?
the 27th.
She moves in today.
And so it's already started. Already got a couple different properties lined up for 2024.
Super exciting.
We're putting together just the documentation, the policies, procedures, everything with this, so it's
So much
scalable. But it has been a lot of work. Probably the most work that I have put in ministry in my 18 years on staff here at Hill City, for sure.
And
but it's all been fruitful.
It's not related to a Sunday morning service, which is wild.
Right.
And a lot of people in church ministry, what, the lead pastor isn't putting most of his energy towards a Sunday morning service? I just applaud you.
Yeah. But I will say I do still put a ton of energy towards the Sunday morning
for sure.
service, but I don't have to be the one doing it, which
Right.
is also a huge testament to my leadership and
Come
the
on,
team that I
somebody.
built here, that I don't have to be the one doing it all, doing that and doing everything on Sunday
Love
and
it.
all the ministry on Sunday, through the week ministering. And then on top of all of that, doing this housing initiative, and leading teams, leading volunteers, being in the community, telling the story, getting things donated. So it's just been something for me, even though it's been a lot of work. I will probably, like you, we talked about before the podcast and what you said, I probably have never been more fulfilled in my 18 years on staff here at Hill City, because I just feel like we're right in line with where God wants us, and we're actually doing things I feel like the church should be doing in impacting the community in a very real and tangible way. And already some of the cities taking notice. A couple weeks ago, we're trying to do everything above board, getting all the proper permitting and all of that. I'll just tell the story on the podcast real quick. But since we tore down an old chain link fence at this property, what we wanted to do is put up a privacy fence, basically in the same location that this chain link fence was in. And so we built the privacy fence, put it up, looks beautiful, got the sod in. Well, we get a letter from the city saying, hey, we never applied for a permit for that. We are not allowed to have a fence, and you got to get a scale drawing, and you got to get with like an architect or a planner to do all this stuff. And then you also got to apply, do the application process. And then if you're approved, then you got to pay a permit to put up a fence. And I'm like, oh man, are you serious? We try to do everything right, and all I'm doing is replacing a fence. I didn't put up a new fence. I should not need to do all this. But I'm like, okay. So I started getting pictures and writing out documentation and getting all the stuff. While I take it down there and I walk in, and it just so happens, I think it was the perfect moment. I'm just going to tell the story. The lady at the front desk just took a big old bite of something, and I opened the door, and she like just removed the fork and was like chewing. We made eye contact. It was super awkward for her, but I just made it so lighthearted. And oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. I caught you in a wrong moment, but it's going to be the right moment. And here's who I am. And I'm from Hill City, and this is what we're doing. She just like lit up, and she's like, we've seen the house. Oh my gosh, what are you doing with that house? It looks so good. And so I got to tell the story, and they're like, oh, okay, I'll go get, I think his name was Scott or whatever. I'm going to go get him. We'll take care of this. I'll be right back. So she went. She's like, here you go. Here's a copy of everything. Everything's signed off for. He's good with everything. We love what you're doing. And so I was just like,
you never told me that story. That's the first time I've heard it.
And so even like the city's taking notice of what we're doing
Yep.
and paying attention, and we're doing everything in excellence. And there's just so much favor. And then so I leave there, and I tell my friend Chris, who also has a construction company and rehabs homes and stuff, and he's like, man, we never get away with stuff like that. She would have been like, go tear the fence out until you get the permit, or, stop working immediately. I need to check on my desk for the permit and this. And I just like, well, I just went in with a smile, and it all worked out. So, so it was just really cool. But anyways, this idea of the reinitiative, what God gave me and what we're running with here, I think has really been something that has been the biggest win for me in my life. And then, I mean, and that ties in me as the lead pastor here. It's not just what I do, it's just who I am. And
It
so
really is.
it's not just a job for me. It's not just like something I get up to do and put hours in.
our
It's just part of
lives.
my life.
Mhm.
And so I don't really have like a work thing or a church thing and a personal thing. It's all just my life combined. And so that's a huge win. And then I'll say the opportunities that I've had to still travel and make connections this year. I was talking to Melanie, even though this year I didn't go to Europe or anywhere that far away, I still did go to Guatemala. But even in January, we started off in Orlando, and then New York, and then Guatemala and Gulf Shores. And I don't know, there was like 7 or 8 places, and we're ending the year. This Saturday, I'm leaving to go to New Orleans. to baptize one of my best friend's daughter in Lake Pontchartrain, right there in New Orleans, but also to celebrate the New Year down there with some Creole food and a good time in the French Quarter. And so it was just,
You're such a dork. I love
but
it.
I started the year traveling. I'm ending the year traveling, and I consider that a win to still be
For
able
sure.
to get outside of this little bubble, because I do kind of live in this little bubble. I live right next to the church. We live in the small rural community of Floyd Knobs, and sometimes when you don't get out, like, your perspective isn't stretched, your perspective isn't broadened. And I think when you get around new people, new cultures, new lifestyles, new everything, right? And it just expands. I think you get a bigger view of God because you see His love for all humanity
Right.
and all people, all cultures. And so that's always going to be a win for me, to be able to get outside of that and to travel and to experience new cultures. And so,
So
yeah,
crazy.
that's it for me.
I just want to highlight a couple things. One, 2 weeks ago on the podcast, we announced that wish list for this re-initiative. And as we record this, which is a week before this is coming out, we've already hit everything on that list, which is amazing.
Matter of fact, not only did we hit all 87 items, somehow people bought multiples or more because we had 91 items purchased.
Crazy. So thank you for those of you who bought stuff to bless this single mom. And if you want to give towards this re-initiative and you're just inspired by listening to Shanik talk about where our church has been going outside of just the Sunday morning services, you can actually go to hillcity.tv and hit the give button, and then the drop down tab, you can give right to this re-initiative. 100% of your giving will go right into these rehab homes for these single moms, or it will go right into supplying these single moms with types of furniture for their houses. And so what a cool opportunity to be a part of. Thank you for all of you who have already given to that. It's just so incredible. I was thinking about last year, knowing where you were. Would you call last year you were having kind of like a midlife crisis? Would you label it that?
I don't know if I would label it that or not, but yeah, probably 2020, the end of 2021 going into the beginning of 2022.
Yeah. You were just frustrated.
Yeah,
You
frustrated.
just didn't have vision. Like, okay, is this all as a church? And like, if we could have listened to this recording last year, we'd be blown away at how much has been accomplished,
oh my
but how
gosh.
much vision has been given
Yep.
to you. Because I remember sitting in that with you, because I kind of, I'm not in charge. You are. I submit to your leadership. There was a part of me that was like, okay, Shanik, like, we need some vision over here. We're waiting. Where are we rowing? We're on this boat, but we're just, like a one-legged duck swimming in a circle. And honestly, that wasn't what was going on, but that's how I kind of felt, like, specifically around vision. And now to rehash what has happened and the excitement about what will happen. I can't even imagine what we're going to be saying on this podcast in 2024 at the end of, like, we have 2 total homes or 3 total homes, or how many homes or what are we going to be investing in? It's just exciting where our church is going to be. I've just, like I said, and like you said, I've never been more fulfilled in ministry and more excited for where God is taking us at Hill City Church. And so the last couple questions, what's been your favorite podcast of the year?
So I'm going to answer this in 2 parts. First, my favorite podcast still of all time is You Have Permission. It was the very first podcast, but
Yep.
it still spoke to the freedom that we were going to release on the podcast.
For sure.
And of course, it's number 1, so it's the most listened to. But that's not why it's number 1 for me. I think it just started something and sparked something in my heart to really get the message out of freedom and grace and new covenant reality. And so that will still be my all-time favorite podcast, even though we got into some spicy ones and some good ones along the way. That kind of got us rolling. And so it just, again, holds a special place in my heart, just like this house that's down at 607 Silver. It'll probably be my
it'll be your
favorite
baby.
my favorite rehouse of all
baby.
time. Even if we have like apartment buildings one day, like 607 Silver, man, it's still the OG. But for this specific year, as I was looking through it, all of the podcasts, we've done some pretty cool ones. I think just because of what it speaks to, and I still love the story, even though I've heard it multiple times over my life. The podcast we did on Kintsugi, if you remember
Yeah.
that, and it's
I'm
like this
surprised.
broken artwork in Japan where they put the pieces back of this pottery piece with gold, and it makes the broken pot becomes even more beautiful. And all those places that are cracks are even stronger than they were before it was cracked. And so just the beauty of that story. And I always think about it, and I even preached a little bit about it this year, how in 2 Corinthians chapter 4 it talks about this treasure we have in earthen vessels. And we have this treasure, and it says it's to display the all-surpassing glory that is from God. And I think what that means is this earthen vessel, our bodies and our lives, even those weaknesses we feel like we have or perceive we have, even those what we think are broken places, like that's where that treasure and that light shines through even more. And it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it makes our lives even more beautiful. And so we don't hide our past, we embrace it so that our healing journey can help someone else in their healing. And that idea of Kintsugi to me was just a really cool thing. And that's why I say, for me, that's best podcast of the
That's
year for
episode 114, by the way, if you want to go check that out. I'm surprised you didn't say the one with Paul Young and the whole lies we believe about God.
Okay. Well, okay. That was a podcast, but I feel like it was if we're talking series, Lies We Believe About God, for sure my favorite series of the year, just individual podcast. But the one with Paul Young, that was like an interview. I'm not going to count that because that wasn't us. Basically, we just said, hey, talk. And for 45 minutes, man, he just like was throwing out truth bombs and love.
Which is one of our most listened to episodes of all time as well.
Yeah.
For sure. I'm going to go back, like you said. I think my all-time favorite is still in year one, episode 29, You're Not Broken, just because what that has done in the counseling world for me and the classes I'm lead that has been like the foundation of it all. And even that deconstruction series that first year, episodes 44 through 49 were awesome. Last year, that biblical versus unbiblical, or biblical
versus
Christ-like episode, I think that's episode 81, was one of our most listened to. The people in the Netherlands like that the most. Wow, that was loud in the mic. And then this year was probably episode 146, the What If I Told You book release.
Hey, it was one of your wins, the celebration.
Yeah, go get the book if you haven't already for the third time this episode. No, this year, probably because the conversations I had with people in the Netherlands was episode 116 and 117. That episode 116 was What is a False Teacher? And episode 117 is What is Sound Doctrine? Those conversations are so mind-blowing, especially if you've been raised in the church, because they're not what you think they are, at least scripturally.
Mm-hmm.
And so having those conversations, even with the people in the Netherlands, and how encouraging that was for so many different people in different churches, that feedback really was why I loved it so much. What about favorite sermon at Hill City?
Okay, I'm not going to pick one, even though this past week I preached, and it probably was a top 5 all-time sermon.
It was your best sermon of the year.
And could be the best sermon preached at Hill City this year, maybe behind Paul Young. His was pretty good.
It was awesome.
But I just felt amazing just talking about things that I'm passionate about. Felt like it came across really well.
Yeah.
But no, that was a kind of a joke, but not really. But the series that I ended and concluded with this past week, Navigating Minefields.
Mm-hmm. Really
and
good.
I even open up in my message about, I guess you probably picked up on that, how I tied in what everyone kind of talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just recapping, hey, week 1, Corey talked about this, and Mikey talked about this, and De'Eric and Jamie, I kind of talked about how what I've learned and what I've said under the teaching, how it helped me process some maybe insecurities that I was feeling to navigate that minefield of insignificance, and how it really helped free me and the process to that. So this series, I think, was the most, not just practical, but helpful series we've done in a very long time. If people really pay attention, listen, and put it into practice, for sure.
Yeah, I agree with you for sure. So it was my favorite from that standpoint, same as well. But from a unique standpoint, I'm going to go back to cultural communion, not because of necessarily what was taught, but because of the experience in the room where we took everybody off the stage and worshiped in the round and taught in the round on the floor, just because of the uniqueness of it. I think that was my favorite one of the year.
Changing it up.
Change it up.
It was good.
I like some change. All right, last question of the podcast as we close up the year 2023. What have you been wrestling with or struggling with, and what has been encouraging to you in the process?
So I'm going to tie it back to this reinitiative and my big win from this year to get started. I would say the biggest thing I'm wrestling with now is I know how much work was involved in doing everything I do to lead this organization, to still do my lead pastoral duties, to oversee the team, to oversee what happens on Sunday, oversee what elements of ministry we're going to be involved in, and what we're going to do to lead the board, to really, my position here also is, if you want to call it, executive budgeting decisions, So accounts,
Outreach.
outreach, HR, like staff relation.
You
Like,
heard everything but pretty much the title of lead pastor, but all of
No,
those encompass in
that
it.
is lead pastor.
Yeah.
That's why you're teaching pastor.
Mhm.
I don't see in my mind lead pastors
No, I
don't
was
need
talking-
to preach.
I was
like,
talking
it's
about
doing
in-
everything
in
else.
context of church
Yeah,
ministry.
yeah.
Like your
It's
typical.
everything else.
I'm agreeing with you.
And so my struggle is, okay, we finished one, but I really have a heart to do so many more. Like, I want to do 3 or 4 homes this year. I want to scale this thing. I want it to be bigger because I know the need, I know the win, I know the kingdom impact it makes, the community impact. And so I'm struggling with knowing my limitation and not wanting to rob my family
Ooh, good.
from me. And I could very easily do that because of the success in what we've seen with the reinitiative so far, and to take that and be like, okay, now I'm really making a difference and impact. I'm so fulfilled. And then now I fill my life with too much. And what was a fulfillment becomes a drain. And so I'm wrestling with how I navigate growing and scaling and getting new people. And I would say I'm also, I'm putting myself out there and saying I am wrestling with my control issue and being able to trust others.
Like specifically with the housing?
Well, if this is going to grow, I can't do it all myself. If it's going to grow to something bigger than just me, which it should, bigger than just Hill City, which it should, I got to start relinquishing control and allow others and delegate and partner and have other people involved in this process. And I'm not going to be able to control all the aspects of it, and I want to.
Yeah, that's good. I know one of our core principles that we teach even interns that go through this process is never sacrifice your family on the altar of ministry. And I think that applies to what you're just saying, but the ministry looks different and drastically different than it ever has before. And so you're struggling with that. And I love that you said that, because I think that is the most important leadership principle, is to not sacrifice your family for the expense of whatever it is that you're involved in.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's good. I think for me, I'm in a similar situation with family stuff, but the season of life that we're currently in, like my family, has just been crazy. We have a 9-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And we've had so much busyness, even though I hate that term, in our life, but not just like what we've committed to, but medical issues that take up so much time. So not only are our kids in sports and music lessons, which are every single week. Thank God sports is over for this season. We didn't sign them up for basketball because we're like, we just need a break on a Saturday. But Zion is in 2 medical things every single week. Scarlett is in eye therapy every single week, and we have to drive an hour away for that. And so these things every single week, on top of all of our, my wife and I both work, and we both are trying to work on our own relationship. And Thursday nights is eye therapy since October, since we got that. So we haven't had our normal date night, which has thrown everything off in consistency with Julie and I. And it throws everything off with relationally. And so I just feel, even though I have a lot of relationships, and you're my best friend, but I get to work with you. We haven't hung out, and we talked about this last week. We haven't hung out outside of work in months, just us and our wives. And that's frustrating. And it's not like I need necessarily more relationships. Oh yeah, come on, let's go hang out. Like, I just don't have that margin to even spend time with the relationships that I do want. I had a good friend talking about this with me. He was like, man, I wish we were next door neighbors so that we could hang out more. And I said, you say that. And one of my good friends is literally my next door neighbor. And we've hung out twice since October out when the kids go to bed. It's just because of like our season. And so I'm like really struggling with wanting to invest in the people that I care about the most, because I'm invested in so many different things. And my family time is so like, Julie is either taking a kid or I'm taking a kid. And it's just been exhausting. And I'm fulfilled in work, but I'm exhausted in life. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm hoping for, Julie and I have been sitting down talking about our schedule. Where can we like schedule margin or schedule time, just the 2 of us? And we're figuring it out, but it just sucks to look back and be like, man, I didn't get as much time with the people I love the most. And that has to change in 2024. That will change in 2024. So
yeah. And I would say I'm in a similar spot. Of course, I brought up to you, hey, we haven't hung out. Like, what the heck's going on? But I would say even that's true for me a little bit as well. Like, all the people that still want to connect with me, in this place even. And a lot of people like you and Julia, everyone's working, and so they need evenings. Well, I don't have a lot of evenings free. And so I have very few evenings, and I have to schedule out people 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead of time, maybe a month ahead of time, just for one night with me. And so I've even told even some of my friends, like, I'm so sorry. Like, I hate it because I feel like you can't even consider me a friend because I'm such a crappy friend because I don't have the margin to truly spend with you. No, just other friends in my life.
Yeah.
That
I don't feel that.
That I'm friends with, and I love hanging out with them. When we hang out, it's just we pick back up like we just hung out 2 days ago, but it's been 2 months. But I know they want more, and they want more of a relationship and a friendship, but I can't give it to them, and I feel really bad about that, specifically with 3 or 4 people that I really do love and care about and want to spend time with. And it is just hard in the season that I'm into, and growing and working out this reinitiative and having 4 kids at home, and they're in sports, and it's every night, and it's just the world that we live in and I live in. But scheduling that margin is going to be super important for me in 2024.
That's my challenge
as well.
Too. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, so we hope that you were maybe encouraged with this as we just kind of talked about our wins and losses. Maybe it hopefully inspired you to think about some things that happened in your life this past year to look at, to celebrate, and maybe there's some things that just like we answer there, what are some things we've been wrestling or struggling with? Maybe you need to talk to somebody about what you've been wrestling or struggling with, and you guys can journey together in that.
And share your favorite podcast episode on social. Share it with a friend. Make sure you post. We are excited for what this podcast will do in 2024, but it does nothing without you. So thank you again for listening and sharing. Yeah,
we're super grateful for you, and we hope you have the most amazing and safe New Year's this coming up week. Ooh. And we will hear, we will not see you. I was we were going to see you, but not hear from you. We will continue this journey. How about that? We'll continue this journey in the new year, and we hope you join us. And with that, just know you're loved, and there's nothing you can do about it.